from the Crypt.
What is up, freaks? Welcome back to Tales from the Crypt. It's your host, Marty Bent. Switching it up this week. Beverage of choice is coffee. We're recording on a Saturday morning here on 27th and Broadway. Very excited for the conversation we're about to jump into. I think you all will be too. We've got somebody in the studio that's been fascinating me for years on Twitter. He's got some very insightful tweets, very thought-provoking tweets in the crypto space. I'm sure a lot of you who are on Twitter and following crypto have seen some of them. I want to introduce you all to Crypto de Medici.
Hello. Thank you. Thank you for having me. Excited to be here.
Welcome to Tales from the Crypt. Thank you for coming on the Saturday morning. I know you're getting to City just to hang out for the day. I'm very thankful that you decided to spend some time with me.
Yeah, very excited to talk crypto and see where it goes.
Yeah, so we were doing a little prep earlier, talking while we were getting coffee down the street. Like me, you found crypto in college?
Yeah, so I started following. So I stumbled upon crypto just kind of doing research, and this was shortly after it had hit $1,000.
Mm-hmm.
So I decided to go and do some research into what this digital cryptocurrency was about and digital money, and it all sounded very interesting. So I looked into it. I saw that Bitcoin had gone from a couple of dollars to almost $1,000 and more, and that was when I really got interested in looking into it. And then I saw that it was only 21 million Bitcoin ever available, and that was when I realized that it was going to be huge,
mm-hmm.
And that this drop was just going to be a very short kind of glimpse into the story of Bitcoin. And so I started buying some Bitcoin at $600 and $500 right at the end of, it was probably beginning of 2014 as the price was going down from $1,000. Didn't have much money, but decided to get into it because it was too exciting of a project to not get in.
Mm-hmm.
Fast forward a couple of months, didn't really do much. Was just a college student, kept partying and doing everything that a college kid would do. So forgot about crypto for a while. The bear run was pretty bad.
Yeah, you got to get close to the mic.
The bear run was pretty bad. And then a couple of months later, I got really interested again into crypto because I knew that it was going to stick around and that it was going to get bigger than it actually was. And so that's when I really kind of started diving deep and researching projects and figuring out what investments, would start really growing once people got interested in crypto.
Yeah, I mean, you fell down the rabbit hole like many of us did. What were you studying in college?
So I studied political science.
Okay.
I was first interested in business. I've always been interested in business, but I'm someone that has to learn something that I enjoy, or else I don't put any effort or would get really, really bad grades. And so so I decided to go with political science because I've always been interested in politics. Not really kind of the Republican Democrat type of politics, but more about how humans are organized and kind of how countries and the whole world really can progress in a way where it's beneficial for everyone, but at the same time it's moving us in a direction that keeps developing, the world and all of that. So that's really kind of why I got interested in political science and partly why I got really interested in crypto, because I saw that it was, the continuation of this progress for humans, and I think it's something as big, or if not bigger than the internet, and in the way of how it's going to kind of change the world.
Yeah, that's one thing I've been trying to do on this show is put the context of the magnitude of this technological change, like in history. Like, so if you were to put it like how big of an innovation is Bitcoin, like on a scale of history?
It's
in
crazy because
your opinion.
I mean, it's crazy because we don't even, like, if you looked at the internet back, I mean, obviously I wasn't around and I was too young to really know what was happening. But if you looked at back in the internet and like all these machines that held, a couple megabits of data, and now you could hold, terabytes of data. We never could have imagined that we would have, these supercomputers in our pockets and and be able to search something on Google and find it immediately. I mean, it's crazy what has transpired from the beginning until now when it comes to the internet. And so that's kind of the same way that I look at crypto, in the sense of right now it's a decentralized type of currency, platforms, but we don't really know where it's heading. But at least myself, I do think that this is going to bring about the type of change that the internet created, in the sense that it was first the email and then kind of text messages, and then you had sites like social media, and even now with the internet, we're always amazed year after year about what is created from the internet. And so I think that's kind of the same way with crypto, in the sense that it's so exciting and there's going to be so much coming, and we just have no idea the magnitude and the scale, but it's going to be huge.
Yeah, it's crazy to think the iPhone was only invented 10 years ago.
It's nuts. I mean, and I always look at my phone, like the first phone that I got was a BlackBerry, and I love the BlackBerry, but the phone after that was an iPhone. And I would always look at the new iPhone and be like, this is insane. Like, how can it get better than this? Like, this is just amazing. And then every year, or every 2 years, they keep upping the game more and more and more. And you're just like, how can it get better? I mean, I don't understand where it's going.
And it's crazy, because the pace of change is something I've been saying for a while, is that like our monkey brains can't comprehend the pace of change that we're experiencing in our lifetimes. Like, we were born at a point in time where like things are just going like hyperbolic in every sense of the way: population, technology, innovation, production, consumption. And as an animal, at our core level, at a reptilian brain level, like, we're trying to adapt to this change, and it's just like, it's insane in my mind. It's hard to keep up. Thank God we have Twitter for that.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's the beauty. I mean, it's the beauty of all animals, but it's the beauty of humans in the way that they're able to adapt to all these different situations. And yeah, you look at technology and what we've accomplished in the last, let's say, 500, 300, 200, 100 years, and everything just keeps getting smaller in the sense of how fast it's changing. And yet we as humans obviously there's a lot of negative downsides to all of this, in the sense of, you have little kids getting online a lot earlier, technology, iPads, all this. But obviously as we keep progressing, we're going to see that we're going to create kind of barriers and systems that help humans get adjusted to this new kind of wave. But the way that we've been able to adapt to it is pretty crazy. It's very, very interesting how we're doing it, and we're doing it actually quite well. And we're kind of, we're that person. We're like an artist that's like just freehand painting and just kind of figuring out as they go. And hopefully we don't make any big mistakes. But yeah, it's pretty crazy.
It's a fun journey.
Well, and that's kind of partly what I do with my investments in crypto is that I really try to, one, understand the technology and the effects that it's going to have, but also understand that we are animals at the end of the day, and we act and make our decisions based on those animal kind of instincts. I'm a big proponent of the tribe and understanding how the tribe works, because even though we're not really in tribes as we used to be in the past, we are still dominated by those tribes, and we are in tribes. I mean, we have our own groups online, we have our own groups in real life, we have friends, and this is all kind of predicated on specific tribal instincts that we have, and so when I do my investments in crypto, it's always figuring out how the animal side of humans are gonna react, and kind of how tribes fit into all of that.
Yeah, so that's one thing you talk a lot about on Twitter, and trading specifically is emotions, and sort of trying to control your emotions. And in trading, that's one thing I learned early on in the crypto game, is that I cannot control my emotions. So I have a long-term sort of hodl mentality. I do not try to play the swings in the short to medium term. That's just sort of a situation where I try to know what I'm good at and realize I had lack the ability to keep my emotions in check when money's on the line to a certain extent.
And what you're doing is I mean, I think that's what everyone, doesn't matter your expertise or not, that's what everyone should be focusing on is one, figuring out what your strengths are and what your weaknesses are, and then creating a game that only focuses on your strengths instead of your weaknesses. And I do something similar as well, because, well, one is the maximum gains if you're in a good project is the long term. Trying to, like you say, play these waves is one, extremely risky because you can't predict it. And two, it's very volatile just because of the liquidity and just because the market is so new. And that's really where most people essentially get, they're, as they call it, wrecked, because they try to play the market, one, too much, and then two, they don't know how to play the market. When instead they should be focusing on learning as much as they can about the assets and the industry and having that whole HODL mentality, but knowing what asset you're getting into, because this industry is very new and we don't know where it's going to be in 2 to 3 years and which projects are still going to be around, which is very exciting, but also it's scary to, it's scary in the sense that you don't know what, we saw this recent drop of more than 40-50% for most of these assets, which was scary, but it's normal for crypto. This is what's so beautiful about crypto, is that the volatility is just so insane that, like, you need to be emotionally strong. Even with the HODL mentality, like, it hits you. And so you need to understand how you work as an individual and how your emotions are dominating you. So that's something that has allowed me to do well in crypto, in that I'm able to kind of separate myself from my emotions and still feel them, because I think feeling emotions, especially in the market, is extremely important, because you understand what everyone else is feeling like, but you're not allowing them to dominate your thought process and kind of how you react to the situation.
So let's dive into that a little bit, your process. So, like, how long did it take to sort of develop that? And, like, when did you sort of have your aha moment when I was like, all right, I need to learn how to control these emotions. I need to figure this out. And what was, like, sort of your journey down the creation of your process, your investment process?
So I started, I think, just like everyone starts, with the whole day trading mentality. And this was, so like I said before, I got into crypto with a few purchases of Bitcoin back as it was dropping into a bear market, and then I got back in a couple months later, knowing that crypto was going to be big, and so I got into it with the day traders mentality, in the sense of, let's make money every couple of days, let's try to play these waves. And I knew absolutely, one, nothing about the market, and two, no technical analysis, no fundamental analysis. I was the definition of a noob. Which is why I love to talk about noobs so much in my Twitter, because we all were there. And it's not something to bring people down, but it's to let them know, like, you are new. It's okay to make mistakes, ask dumb questions, but don't. The thing that gets me about these people is that they don't know anything about the market. They have barely any experience, and yet they're so confident in what they say. And it's like, just know your place in the market. And if you're new to the market, we're all new, but if you have zero experience in the market, how can you come and start talking shit and also be so confident in your investments? But anyways, so veering off of that, so I tried to do day trading, but I was essentially shooting in the dark, and sometimes I'd make 1%. 0.5%. And so I made the calculations after like a week, figuring out, okay, if I want to grow, so I had very little money, probably just max maybe $2,000. So I was like, if I want to grow $2,000 into a sizable amount within the next year or two, let's figure out how much percentage I need to make, monthly or whatever. And the trades that I was making and kind of the whole strategy that I was making was just, it's going to go nowhere. And so I realized, literally within a week of this day trader's mentality, that it was just, this wasn't my game, and I wasn't going to win, and I didn't have the skills nor the wanting. So, like, technical analysis is very big in crypto, and I think in most markets, but it's very, very big in crypto, and I hate technical analysis. Like I look at a graph and I can understand it better now just because of kind of my experience, but when I start adding all these lines and I start trying to figure out where the marketing is heading, that's where like it doesn't work. Everything kind of starts to shut down.
Yeah, the Mike Tyson philosophy comes into play with TA. Like everybody has a plan to get punched in the face until South Korea shuts down the exchanges or something like that.
Yeah, fundamental analysis, fundamentals will always trump technical analysis. But I mean, obviously technical analysis does have a lot of value, but for me that just wasn't my game. So right off the bat I realized that day trading wasn't my thing. So shortly after that I then focused exclusively. I've always been interested in Warren Buffett, and during that time I kind of started reading a lot more because I wasn't really a big reader. And I also read The Intelligent Investor by Benjamin Graham, and that's kind of where he talks a lot about focusing on long-term investing, on getting, on doing research and understanding companies, and when you find that opportunity where a company is very undervalued compared to what the current price is, to buy it, or buy it when it's at a good price, and then just hold it until the fundamentals have changed or the market has changed. And so I looked at crypto, and I looked at the market cap for all cryptocurrency, and I knew that it was going to be huge, and I knew that it was going to grow really fast. And so I focused on, let me find the assets within the current market, which was very small back then, that are going to rise once the market really, once people start entering the market and all that. So right there, I mean, it was the day trading thing was a very short time, and I realized then that my focus was really going to be on the long term. And so that's where I invested heavily in Litecoin and Dash, because I really like those projects, and so that's kind of how I started with the whole long-term investing, was because I realized that, like I said before, with the strengths, knowing your strengths and weaknesses, my strengths are being able to find assets that, one, are undervalued, but also that are really strong projects that kind of use that whole psychology, the tribal instincts. So when I look at a crypto project, I try to see everything, but also try to see not as much, because I think people get too stuck into the specifics of these projects, when in reality, I mean, like right now with the speculation, it's more about seeing what the narratives will be, to picking a project, instead of actually figuring out which are the most technically sound. Yeah, because it's such a new market that getting lost in the details is where you kind of go crazy.
Yeah, that's one thing. I mean, I've been open about this. I sort of trend towards maximalism. I'm a maximalist to an extent, because I'm a strong believer in the fact that at the end of the day, this comes down to code, and we're securing money, and it's protocols that secure money at their core, and you cannot fuck around with that, like in the long run, in my opinion. Some of my emotions leaking into this, but so I'm one of those people who, like, I probably get lost in the sauce of the technical details to an extent. So what are your thoughts about, like, the viability of these projects long term, and how much is, like, the code aspect and these blockchains being actually secure, scalable, decentralized? How do you think that plays out in the long term? Because I know you were tweeting, I think it was earlier this week or last week, about projects that might start centralized and then move towards a decentralized nature and stuff like that. There might be different paths to these blockchains being successful.
Yeah, it's so the long term. Well, what's interesting about crypto is that long term in crypto could be very, very short term, and as we've seen it, just last year, if you bought in January to now, it's been insane.
Yeah, we're back up around 12.6 right now.
And so I think this goes back to one is, so I look at this recent rise in the last year, and it's risen so high and so quickly that these buying at these levels when it comes to long-term investments is very, very difficult. In the sense of you always want to buy when sentiment is very, very bad, and right now it's very, very positive, and obviously as you see kind of the fundamentals of people coming in and all that, it looks as if it's going to keep going up. So this, and because it's such a new asset class, it's very difficult to figure out where these projects are heading. But the way really that I look at it is I focus on, are these projects going to stick around for at least 3 to 4 years?
Okay.
And at the level that they are right now, when I bought them, are they going to be far higher than in 3 to 5 years? Because it's very, very difficult to figure out which ones are going to be around even longer. I mean, obviously we can assume that something like Ethereum and Bitcoin is going to stick around for that longer, and obviously that can happen. But for me, I want to obviously maximize as much upside as I can, while also minimizing, the downside risk. So that's why I do move more towards other assets that are kind of, I wouldn't say they're sketchy, but it's their future's a lot more uncertain, especially in a market like this. And I mean, so it's very difficult to know which assets are going to be around for the next few years. But the way that I research when it comes to understanding the human psychological part of the projects and also the market, that's kind of what gets me interested in these projects. But I mean, so with something like with a rise like this market, I am thinking about getting a significant amount of the assets out of the market before so I think this is going to crash. I don't know when it's going to crash. It could be tomorrow. It could be a couple of weeks, a couple of months, even a couple of years. But I do think we're rising at such a rate that doesn't kind of show for the actual value that it's creating for the world. I think the world isn't ready for crypto, and crypto is not ready for the world yet, which is why we've seen kind of this huge speculation wave. So I'm more of waiting in the sense of putting in money in the market once we see a really, really bad, I would say something like a crash. And then that's where my research that has been compiled and based on how these assets have performed in this crash, and if fundamentals have changed at all, that's where we go back in and invest heavily. But with a market like this, I think it's not that good of an idea to have a really strong investment thesis. I think it needs to be a thesis that is very able to adapt.
Malleable.
Exactly, because it's more something like you wake up today and the game has changed. The game can change completely. You can have a government like United States that either shuts down the websites or censors it. I mean, there's so much going on in such a new market that you have to be constantly on your toes to figure out what's going to happen.
Yeah. And that's one thing you've been tweeting about recently is trying to get Donald Trump to talk about crypto, which would be hysterical.
Yeah, well,
that could have like a massive pump effect.
Yeah, I'm thinking about. I mean, I'm still thinking about whether I should do it or not. I mean, obviously he's gonna do it regardless. I think it's just a matter of time. But yeah, I'm still thinking about whether it is actually a good idea. I mean, I think overall as an economy, we should be talking about crypto in the sense of we should be investing in mining operations. We should be focusing on ways to integrate blockchain and crypto in general into business and smart contracts and all that. But I think it also goes back to the whole crypto is still too new and it's not really ready for the mainstream. So I think that's partly why we haven't seen the government kind of go as heavily as I would like, but also it's very disruptive and so I think it's going to take some time for the government to really start talking about it. But
yeah, no, that's the one like if you really do the thought experiment of playing out how this technology will change the world. And in my opinion, governments could get rendered obsolete to an extent, their current forms, at least. And that's definitely something that people in power are not going to like. The current structure is not going to like. They're not just going to fucking let it take over. It's not going to be a smooth transition by any means. I mean, I hope everybody knows that out there. And like you said, crypto is not ready for the world, and the world might not be ready for crypto. It's a huge learning curve. You got to it's a paradigm shifter. So you got to literally change the whole world, your worldview to an extent. You have to have that hard conversation with yourself. What is money? Like, that's one thing I'm trying to do in this podcast, is have people question that. Like, what is money? People don't think about it. They don't really understand it at the end of the day. Like, 5 out of 10 people I'll ask, like, this is one of my favorite questions to ask, like, what is money? Like, what is the US dollar? And 5 out of 10 people will say, oh, it's backed by gold. And I'm like, no, it's not. Like,
really? Is it backed by gold? That's hilarious.
I get that a lot. You'd be surprised. Like, or maybe you wouldn't be. But you were talking about you're waiting for a crash to come in the markets. Do you, like, yeah, so a crash would come, in my opinion, when people sort of wholesale come to agreement that these projects sort of don't live up to their marketing to an extent. I've been arguing that Bitcoin and potentially Monero, maybe add Zcash to it, but like there's only very few blockchains that are doing what they market to do, censorship resistant transactions. That's why I love Bitcoin, because it's just simple and has a very simple function to do one thing very well. And I think it does that thing very well. And I think people get caught up in the fee debate and all that right now. I think people got to think more long term when it comes to fees and sort of how we can lower them and make the protocol level more efficient. I think a lot of people are impatient right now. But in a crash, do you see anything staying steady? Like, do you think Bitcoin goes down with the tide, or do you think it'll just be like a wipeout set in surfing where it just wipes out the trash coins?
So I would actually. So I mean, my thinking changes daily, just because it's. I think both sides of the argument are very, very strong in the sense of whether everything would go down or whether only the really bad projects. I hope everything goes down.
Yeah.
So you know, right now obviously it's heavily fueled by speculation. Everyone wants to get rich, and you see a lot of these really bad projects going up a ton. And so I think it's only going to get worse in the sense that it's going to keep going up and up and up. And so everyone, I think this is where the paradigm shift is going to hit, where everyone thinks crypto is going to be the next big thing. And it is going to be the next big thing, but it's not going to be the next big thing tomorrow or a year from now or 2 years from now. It's going to be a big thing in 5, 10, 15, 20 years.
Yeah.
When crypto really gets integrated into the whole society and everyone starts using it on the daily basis. And so I think this is where it's so exciting as a new industry, and that's why I tell people to really focus on learning about the industry, learning about the assets, about the companies, about the trends that are heading, because it's just beginning. And so this current wave of speculation is just because because crypto is the new kid in town, and everyone's really excited to get into it, and so a lot of people are drinking that Kool-Aid and thinking that this is it, and you know, next year, you know, your grandma's gonna start using crypto and all that, and you could start, you know, paying your bills and all in crypto, which you can right now, but it's just not feasible for the overall market, and so once this realization that once reality hits, I think it's going to be really bad. And I presume, I think that I'm leaning more towards, I think everything is going to crash, in the sense that the market makers and the people with big money that do see something like, let's say, Monero or Bitcoin or these really strong projects that are going to be around, will take this as an opportunity to crash even more, so they can, you know, load up even more on their bags as they use the panic of the market to, you know, to push the prices down. Yeah. Because I don't think these big guys want to buy Bitcoin. I mean, they've been buying Bitcoin at these prices, but it's so like when they say with the government, you know, in a tragedy like never goes to waste or something like that, never waste a tragedy or something like that. And so basically saying like if a tragedy hits, like you have to take advantage of that tragedy.
Yeah.
And so a panic like this where everything would crash would be a perfect opportunity to start buying up.
Yeah, if the panic does, it will come eventually. Markets come in cycles, and they come in emotional cycles. So there will be a panic one day, someday. It'll be something really going to test the mettle of the hodler mentality.
And that's, the thing is, because crypto is so new and we have so little information when it comes to like the past, we can only assume that, something like 2013 where everything went down, that's going to happen. But I think, especially with it's going to be interesting to see how Bitcoin preserves its dominance, and not the percentage dominance, which is always talked about, but really its dominance within the market, in the sense of when Bitcoin goes down, as we saw these last few days, it brings everything down. Yeah. When Bitcoin goes up, so the relationship is still not clear yet, but what's clear is that Bitcoin is still the big guy in the room,
top dog.
And so it's going to be interesting to see if we eventually see more of a split up between these relationships, and some assets are going to be able to go up as Bitcoin's going down, or vice versa. And also in these types of crashes, there will be assets that won't get affected. But I think in this next crash, whenever it happens, the Bitcoin dominance is going to be so high that it's still going to affect the overall market, which is very exciting for anyone that does want to get in and prepares for it. So what I would recommend is, as you're making money, and I think 2018, at least for the majority of 2018, it's going to be huge. I think the bull run is just going to continue. People are entering the market really quick. But I would also start creating a strategy of how to take out money from the market and put into fiat, and prepare for the eventual crash, which I do think is going to happen. The difficulty is when. Yeah. And obviously you don't want to sell too early, and also you don't want to sell too late. But having a good strategy, taking out, 5%, 10% every few months or every month or whatever, I think would be a good idea to start doing. Maybe not now, but once prices kind of pick up a little more.
Yeah, that's one thing I recommend as well, is like sort of figure out like a mental process and a plan. Like, just don't run into this and like you wind up holding a bunch of money and you're like, all right, what the hell do I do with this? Like, figure that out before you get in. And so predicting a crash at some point, but first it'll be a huge run up. So would you recommend people get skin in the game via dollar cost averaging right now, or obviously learn about what you're getting into first, but for people who are ready to put money in, how would you like recommend they go about that?
I would focus on so I would, let's say you have $1,000 to invest. I would put in maybe like $100 or $200 into something like Bitcoin or Ethereum. So one, I would, if you really, really want to understand what you're buying, I would recommend people look at the top 10 cryptocurrencies and start doing some research. In the beginning, do a very quick research of understanding kind of the essence of the project. Maybe a paragraph long or less, knowing what the project is going to do and what they say it's going to do and exactly kind of how it's going to work. So you have a good understanding of the top 10 and kind of have a good idea of what are the big market movers and all that. But I would recommend, it's difficult because we don't really know. I'm very, very I'm very bullish on these bigger ones like Bitcoin and Ethereum. I think Ethereum in particular, with the ecosystem and the strength of it and the lack of media presence in the sense of Ethereum itself, I think it's going to do very well. And Bitcoin, obviously, just its dominance and its natural power in the market is going to keep going up. And the fact that I think right now there's 13 million Bitcoin available, probably even less, just because everything has been kind of stored away in the sense of millions of Bitcoin haven't been kind of moved in years. But the supply for something like Bitcoin is tiny. So I think we haven't really seen the big FOMO that, obviously we've seen a huge FOMO, but it's going to be crazy once people start fighting over a few million Bitcoin. And I think that's going to happen in 2018. But I would put some money in Bitcoin. I think Bitcoin Cash as well, Ethereum, maybe some in Litecoin. Litecoin, I have a love-hate relationship with them. They were my biggest investment, but I sold recently. But I think they're also going to do well. So I would put a big portion of the money that you're putting into something like Bitcoin and Ethereum, which are kind of the big guys, and then more smaller buys into something like Bitcoin Cash and maybe Litecoin. So you dip your toes in. It's money that you can afford to lose, and you just let it stay there for a few months as you're doing research. So I think anyone that's entering this market should put at least an hour a day, just doing research and understanding the assets. And that's research is not reading articles from CoinDesk and CNN and CNBC and all these.
No, it is not.
All these media companies. That is not research. Research is going to the website, going to the Reddit, going to the Discord or Slack or Telegram, reading the white paper, understanding the roadmap. So you look at something like Ethereum, understanding when the scaling is going to come out, what the scaling is about, ICOs. You have to really understand the overall asset in order to be able to then start putting in big money that you're confident about, and also understanding what the market is like. But yeah, it's going to take some time, and that's why I recommend an hour a day, maybe split into 2 30-minute sessions, because after a month you're going to realize how much more you know because of that hour that you spent.
Yeah, no, that's read as much as possible. And that's the great thing about this space is everything's open source, so you can literally find anything you need on the internet. And then let's segue this into the Twitter conversation. I mean, that's where the crypto conversation is happening. And if you know who to follow and sort of what conversations to hop into on Twitter, you can learn a lot as well. And the beauty of Twitter is that you can find people working on these projects and people that have been around for a while and ask them questions, and every once in a while they'll answer you with some pretty good information. So we were talking about that when we were in line getting coffee, is just sort of the beauty of Twitter and what it has provided for us in particular with this crypto mania. So yeah, I think it's the best communication tool we've ever created up to this point. It sucks they can't monetize it. It sucks they have the best product in the world and they're such a shitty company. It blows my mind to an extent.
It drives me nuts.
I've got friends that work at Twitter too. I love you all.
I don't. Nah, just kidding. I don't like the management. But yeah, like what you were saying Twitter is amazing. It is like you say, yeah, it's unfortunate that it's just the people at the top. I don't know. I mean, I think there's some political there's some power plays being put into Twitter, and I think anyone in power knows how important Twitter is, and that's why they've tried to censor opposing views and views that they don't really agree with. But that's with all social media. All social media, it's a beautiful thing, but it's also very scary for people in power in the sense that people can talk and all this.
It's really like when I had Santi on, Santiago Siri, I have to say this every goddamn podcast, name drop him. I got to stop doing that. But we were saying like it just proves the emperor wears no clothes. Like you can get on there and it's the biggest creator of empathy in the world, I would argue, and you can literally hop into somebody's shoes and get their point of view via now 280 characters. But that, and people can get on there and like something will happen politically or in the news and they'll start having a conversation and I'll be like, wait, it actually didn't happen that way, and like maybe there's more to the story, and you can just dive down rabbit holes of conversations about very niche topics and sort of and learn.
Yeah. Oh yeah, Twitter's amazing. And crypto Twitter in particular is great if you want to learn about crypto. So that's if anyone's obviously interested in crypto or learning more about crypto, like Twitter is the place to be. Because that's where you know all the news that's happening, where you follow people that are trading, investing, talking about the philosophical aspect. I mean, everything. You find everything about crypto. And so anyone that's not in Twitter and that is in crypto is just missing out a lot.
Yeah.
And so what I would recommend people, create your own separate Twitter account. I mean, you could do normal Twitter, but I think with something like crypto, especially if you want to really dive deep, you're going to be talking about it all the time. So if you have kind of an account that's devoted to that, it makes it easier, and you don't annoy your friends too much. Because that is happening.
I've done that. I've already wholesale just accepted it.
Yeah, I mean, hey, that's the way to go.
Everybody comes up to me like, "Hey, your Twitter always interests me. I don't understand any of it though."
Well, I used to. Well, that's kind of why I went anonymous. Well, semi-anonymous, because I don't really care if people know who I am and all that.
Yeah, that's what I was curious to know. I gotta know, like.
Yeah, no, I don't. I mean, it's something like, if you really wanted to find me, you could easily find me.
Yeah, that's the same with me. Like, my name's not Marty Bent.
So in the past, when I had my own personal Twitter, and I think that's what's interesting about Twitter is that when I joined Twitter, you first join with all your friends and people that you know from school, and you quickly realize that everyone has such different interests that. I would be talking about like conspiracy theories or like political stuff or just crazy things. I mean, and you see it on Twitter, just crazy things that I just think about just randomly that other people might find value in. And so I would have all these people just always commenting and wondering like, what the hell are you talking about? Like why aren't you talking like a normal human being?
It's like, what is a normal human
exactly,
being?
Yeah. and so I was like, I want to separate myself from, that kind of life. And so I created an anonymous Twitter account. First, it was one that was for self-improvement and because I'm really big in self-improvement and, kind of picking up habits that will kind of lead you in the direction that you want to go. And then I stumbled upon crypto Twitter, and this was around probably mid 2014. Maybe earlier. I don't really remember, but so I created a new Twitter account, and that was focused on cryptocurrencies. And in the beginning, I just was observing other traders, investors. It was mostly traders back then. People talking about the market, and for the first few months, I just did nothing but observe and ask questions. And I think that's what most people entering crypto should focus on, is just observing. Understanding who are the people that really know what they're talking about, who are the people that are just kind of talking shit, and then also asking questions to figure out, answering the questions that might take you a couple of hours to find that you could actually get from one conversation. And so I did that, and it was, I've been in Twitter since. But so one thing to get people, because I get a lot of questions from Twitter accounts, and the problem I have with these Twitter accounts is that they don't even ask the question. They like state confidently a very wrong idea, and so there's no way that I'm going to answer you in that way. I mean, it's just people should be asking questions. You just ask the question. What do you think about this and that? Just ask the question. But yeah, these people come with like a very argumentative, and so that's one strategy to be able to get these people that are really kind of high up when it comes to all these followings. So I hate it, but it does work because you do answer them, and so you come in with a very dumb statement, and you like attack the person, and you say something like, let's say I was saying that Litecoin is a great project because X, Y, and Z, and then someone comes in and says, Litecoin is a scam because X, Y, and Z. And so that gets the person riled up, and it gets them to answer, which it does work partly. But, if you really want answers, you just ask a question and you act like you're genuine.
Yeah.
But yeah, anyways, from that ramble, crypto Twitter is a great resource. And I think anyone that wants to learn more about crypto should focus on that.
Yeah, no, it's funny. I get my DMs blown up as well, and I try to answer as many as possible, as politely as possible. But it's funny. It is funny how confident some of the noobs and the idiots are out there. But
crazy. It gets me so mad because these are the same people that are convincing others to get into all these assets that both don't know anything about, and then they get wrecked because they don't have a strategy.
They get their dicks pushed in. We talk about getting your dick pushed in a lot on this podcast. We try to avoid it. We're trying to give you the signal through the noise here. So yeah, and it's another. There's a lot of themes in this podcast. One of them being crypto is a journey. Like you're taking a step on a journey once you dive into this rabbit hole. It's going to take time. You're not going to learn everything overnight, but if you dedicate time to it and you're really committed and you do enough reading and you do enough research and you talk to enough people and you sort of pick things up and become more confident as time goes on. And it's about basically knowing the whole landscape, and this landscape is growing at such a crazy pace that you sort of have to dedicate more time as we're getting further into Bitcoin's blockchain. Like, as more blocks are created and more projects are created, like, your attention is needed in more areas, and it's crazy how vast the crypto space is at this point. Like, and one thing you talk about a lot too is separating these assets into sectors. So there's different types of sort of blockchain projects out there. Bitcoin obviously being sound money, Ethereum being a platform, Anon coins with Monero and Zcash, and masternode projects like Dash and stuff like that. So what are your views on the sectors? Like, how do you break it up, and how do you sort of delegate your time between these sectors?
Yeah, so sectors is just a very kind of easy way of separating, just figuring out, I mean, there's just so many projects coming out and so many existing projects. And so sectors kind of allows you just to see which are the competing projects, and figure out if there's specific sectors that are very undervalued in the sense of the importance of it in the overall industry. And so, one, I think it's you don't want to, you don't want to try to research as many assets as you can. So I think the more you do, sometimes the more confused you get, especially if you're new to the industry. And so I recommend people really focus on the big sectors, or the ones that they find more. So I think it's more about following your curiosity. So if you're very, very interested in crypto in the sense of how it can help you transact money privately, then it would be a good idea for you to focus on the privacy sector, because that's something that you naturally have an interest in. And so I think that's why I tell really people to focus on learning about crypto, finding what you're most curious about that you think is gonna kind of be improved or changed because of crypto, and then just start kind of going down that journey, like you said, because crypto really is about not only the ability to make money, but also about using the skills that you're receiving from crypto and actually building yourself into kind of the individual that you want to become. And so we see with these drops and these prices going up and down, it really, really helps the way that you deal with your emotions, not only just in crypto, but also in life. Yeah. And so all of these skills that you are inadvertently picking up from crypto are very, very important, but they're even more important once you know that you're actually picking them up. And so once you know that you're picking them up, and also once you're making kind of calculated moves to help improve those specific skills that you want to pick up or that you want to improve, the game just gets more fun. And so these drops, I love these drops because these drops test me, and these drops kind of bring those stress response signals, and it's the experiences that I think everyone needs to go through many times, as well as doing research, figuring out what's bullshit, what's not bullshit. I mean, I think so people should look at crypto as like a resume builder. It doesn't matter how much money you're making or not making. Just focus on getting really good at understanding the industry, and then just follow your passion and start building up your skills as you're kind of going through, because the industry is so new, and if you really focus on building those skills up within a year or two, I mean, even just a few months, like you can be a huge contender for any, you could be an expert at the privacy sector and whatnot. And so I think that's why people should really focus on the learning aspect. But yeah, so with the sectors, I focus on, so my big ones are privacy, platform, and then masternodes, which is not really sector, but I like to see it as a sector. And so privacy, I think, is extremely, extremely undervalued.
Oh yeah, I do as well.
Yeah, I mean,
that's what people don't realize. Like people don't realize how big the dark web is and how valuable privacy is to some people.
And when you use something like Bitcoin or Ethereum or any of these other assets, and you're actually like paying people and you're moving your money around. It's just insane how it's all public.
Mm-hmm.
And so anyone that knows your address knows what you're doing. I mean, obviously they don't know if you paid for a hooker or not, but they know that you sent the money, this amount of money at this time.
They know how much money you have. Like, they can just check in your wallet. Like.
And now with these companies that are getting really good at analyzing the blockchain, it's getting less and less private. So the privacy sector is going to grow and extremely. I mean, it's going to keep growing and growing and growing. And so that's a sector that I would recommend people start looking into. And so you have something like Monero, Zcash, those are kind of the big boys. And then you have smaller projects. One of them, which I like, which is Zcoin. And so you figure out which are the sectors that you kind of like and which ones you think that are still undervalued. And then you kind of just focus on doing as much research in these assets as you can. And so like, as you're doing research in the sector and the privacy, you figure out, okay, so Monero is a big boy and this is the technology that it has, exactly how does it work, that anonymous, how anonymous, is it actually anonymous? Because a lot of these projects say they're anonymous, but they're not actually anonymous. And so that's where you start separating the signal from the noise.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's why research is so crucial. And so now let's say you did five privacy cryptocurrencies. So after 5 or after 2 or 3, you should already know which ones are going to stick around,
mm-hmm.
At least for the next, couple of years. And then, obviously, if your hypothesis is that the privacy sector is going to start doing very well in the next few months, then you start looking at, okay, which asset is probably going to gain the most if my hypothesis is right, and why? You figure out the narratives. You figure out, okay, the development team is focusing heavily on Asia, or they're focusing heavily on North America, and kind of this is the narrative that I think they're going to start to play. Mm-hmm. Because what happens is, as the prices start going up, or as they look like they're going up, people start creating these stories of why. So like Bitcoin, why is Bitcoin going up? And so people say, store of value, gold, then, digital gold. And so these are the narratives that you need to understand for the asset that you're investing in to figure out exactly how it's going to work and if it's going to be a good narrative.
Yeah.
And this goes back to kind of the whole human psychology, is understanding how these tribes tell these stories.
Humans love narratives.
Oh, and to convince themselves of the price. So like you see something like, I mean, any of these assets that are high up, you talk to anyone that is fully in line with the narrative, and it's a narrative. That's what it is. That's I mean, that's why we do so well in society and all that, because it's just we're telling ourselves stories that we all kind of believe, and that goes with the dollar.
Yeah,
the fiat. Exactly. It's just a narrative. It's the narrative that the dollar is backed by the U.S. government, the military. And it's just paper, but the narrative is what works.
And that's why I'm a maximalist, because I think the founder narrative of Satoshi is going to win out in the long term. Humans love religion. They love mystery, and I think the Satoshi narrative is gonna win out in the long run. And
Bitcoin has the strongest tribe out of all of them. I mean, by far.
Yeah, definitely. And again, going back to the fundamental at an engineering level, like I think it's the safest blockchain. I mean, it's got what I would consider the smartest people in the space. If you do research on the cypherpunks and the technologies they built leading up to Bitcoin and what the core developers were working on before Bitcoin, like, these people are worth their metal. They know their shit to an extent. They know, I mean, and again, this is the narrative I believe in. It comes down to belief at the end of the day. I believe that the narrative of slow and steady security over everything is the right narrative to follow. I could be wrong. Well,
and the narrative that you're saying is a narrative that has worked and has put Bitcoin where it is right now.
Yeah.
And so the key to these investments and figuring out where they're going to be in a year or two from now is seeing the price right now and seeing if that narrative is strong enough to not only keep the price, but also continue to increase it in the next 2 to 3 years. Because I think, so with most of these assets, you could buy it at this level, and let's say we do see a crash and it all goes down. But if let's say Bitcoin, what is it at right now?
It's at 12.7.
Okay, so let's say 13,000. Let's say we see a crash tomorrow and it goes all the way down to, let's say, 6,000 or 5,000.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't really matter. I mean, obviously it matters because short term you lost a ton of money paper wise. But like if you know that in 2 to 3 years it's going to be worth $50,000 or $60,000, like why are you worrying? Obviously you messed up in the sense that you could have bought even lower. But if you know the true value, at least in the sense of the next 2 to 3 years, because it's very difficult to figure out even longer, but if you know that this industry is going to stick around and that you're very, very confident in the development and the future of the specific asset, then there's no reason to worry.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's the problem with most people, is that they don't do the research and they don't have strong convictions in these projects. So if it does go down 50% or whatever it is, they freak out and they sell at a loss.
The weekends,
Mm-hmm.
SFYL.
And there was, I mean, it's crazy the impatience that a lot of these people have. It's like they want to make 100% gain tomorrow, not realizing that if you just wait a year or two, you're going to make, 10x.
Exactly.
And so like, it's like the more patient you are and the more you understand these assets, the more likely you're going to make even higher gains. And so like you see all these people trying to trade daily or weekly or monthly. And it's like, you could have just bought really good projects back in January
Mm-hmm.
and done extremely, extremely well and done nothing for the whole. I mean, that's literally what I do. I research these assets, I invest heavily, and I just sit on my ass. I mean, it's pretty crazy how it works, but that's when you have kind of the long-term mentality, in the sense that I don't have to wake up every day and try to trade to, make money.
Mm-hmm.
It's about putting in the effort in these assets and kind of focusing on the long-term gain.
Yeah.
And the profits just, they pile up.
And that's like the whole Warren Buffett mentality. Just understand when you're investing in, have some conviction, and sit on your ass.
And sitting on your ass is the hardest part, which is everyone says, oh, that's easy, but no, it's not easy, because through this last, if you look at this last year, I mean, there were many drops. Like, I mean,
there were 30% drops last year.
Yeah, I mean, well, that's why I love Twitter, because everything is there. Even if you delete it,
Mm-hmm.
it's in my head.
Yeah.
And so like you see a lot of these Twitter accounts that sold at $1,000,
Mm-hmm.
sold at $2,000, $3,000, and it just keeps going up. And every drop, a ton of people are selling, or they're very bear and they think it's going to go lower and lower, and that's why. And so it's being able to sit on your ass and know that the asset's still going to go up, or that even if it does go down, that the asset's still undervalued. And but yeah, I mean, it's not easy to sit on your ass, and I think that's why you have to build these skills and also have the strategy and the know-how and the research to be able to kind of weather those events out.
Yeah. And with all that being said, though, my favorite sector of crypto Twitter is trading crypto Twitter. There's a bunch of degen anon accounts that are fucking hilarious. It's crypto trading Twitter is one of the funniest Twitters out there.
Oh yeah, it's great.
It's a bunch of degens. Some of them are doing really well. Very well. I mean, some of them are good traders, and that's one thing. I'm not a good trader, but I'm happy for those that are and are crushing it and entertaining us on Twitter. Crypto Cobain, shout out Crypto Cobain. I think he's hilarious.
Well, and it's funny because it's like that quote. I mean, it's not a quote, but it's like a saying. It's everyone in crypto Twitter is doing great.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing is that it's not.
No. Deep down inside, some of these people are like, "Fuck."
Yeah, I mean, because it's not easy.
No.
I mean, it's a very difficult market, and you have to really have a strategy down and understand the market well enough to do well, because it's not easy at all. Obviously, if you're gonna look back and when you have kids in 10 years or whatnot, and you start talking to your kids about crypto, they're gonna be like, how did you not become a billionaire? It was so easy to become a billionaire. But then, and so like you look at these graphs, and obviously you look at something like Bitcoin, it just keeps going up. And it's like, obviously if you bought in January, like you're up.
Mm-hmm.
But if you really start looking at the details and like you focus in on the specific candles and the specific price movements, it's very, very difficult.
Yeah, you get lost in the sauce. You're easily swayed to make rash decisions.
Very, very difficult. And it's such a new market that you don't know where it's heading. And so one of these drops could actually be going down.
Yeah, it could be the last drop with no recovery. It's possible.
Yeah, so
know that possibility.
Mm-hmm. So crypto Twitter is funny because it's a lot of people that everyone's trying to be right, and
guilty.
Yeah, and well, I mean, we're all trying to be right, and obviously, you're putting your neck out there every time you talk about an asset and talk about where you think it's going to go, and I think that's the beauty of crypto Twitter is that obviously you're going to be wrong, but if you really put in the work, you could build a reputation where people actually listen to what you say.
Mm-hmm. No, and I think you've done a very good job of that, and just by taking the approach that you've been describing in the last hour. And that's why I wanted to bring you in, is because I think the process of understanding feelings and sort of understanding what you're investing in and being able to wrangle your emotions is very important to realize. We live in a society that loves instant gratification, and people need to learn the art of patience and you, like you said, you can do better in the long term if you just understand, have some patience, and have some conviction to an extent.
And that's why I talk. So, I don't do a lot of signals or kind of, obviously from time to time I do talk about specific assets and where I think they're going, because I think that is important to let people know, one, that you know what you're talking about, and two, that you actually provide some help in figuring out the market, whether I'm right or wrong, obviously. But I think the most important thing is helping people understand kind of my own journey, because really I tweet for myself. So everything that I talk about and all these kind of, lists of things to do and emotions and all that, that's all really talking about myself, but I put it out there because I know that it's going to be of value to someone else. And that's really what's most important. It's building the skills, and also helping people along the way. And I think we're going to be seeing more of that, where people really, because it's kind of like, teach a man to fish and he can eat for a lifetime or whatever. And I think that's what's most important about the game, is that it doesn't matter which assets go up today or tomorrow. What really matters is, are you building that foundation where you can be able to not only survive, but also thrive in a market like this, which is going to be around for decades and even longer. Yeah,
possibly centuries to millennia. Which is crazy to think that we're at the very beginning stage of this stuff. I've said it before, I'll say it again. It's such a fucking crazy time to be alive. And
I mean, it's just, and that's what's crazy. It's it's not even just crypto. You look at what's happening in the world, and you're like, this is insane. We're literally and I was talking to my family about this. I was like, can you imagine that when we were born, technology was barely being used?
I remember when we fucking got caller ID for the first time. We thought that was insane.
Dial-up. We would literally use the computer, and you wouldn't be able to use your phone.
I remember that I have this weird, vivid memory of living in Northeast Philly in a row home, and for some reason, I remember getting caller ID in our house and being amazed, we can see who's fucking calling us. Holy shit.
You know who not to answer to.
Exactly. As a 6-year-old, for some reason, I always associate that with the emergence of cinnamon mini Eggos as well, for some reason.
Those Eggos, everyone ate those Eggos.
I associate the cinnamon Eggos with caller ID.
It's those funny associations where you're like, how in the hell did those associations come out? But they just do.
Yeah, exactly.
No. It was probably one day you were eating breakfast, Egos, and then the caller ID came up, and you just were like, nope, not this girl.
Aunt Lisa, we're not talking right now. But yeah, just so that was probably 1997, 1998, around there. No, probably even earlier, probably 90, 95, 96. I was really young, but it's crazy. Now I have a fucking supercomputer in my hand, about to send this recording from a MacBook to my Gmail account, and we're gonna download it and fucking post it on iTunes, none of which existed when I was 5 or 6.
And you can't imagine life without everything that you have right now.
No.
And the thing was that a few years ago, 10 plus years ago, there was life without it. And now you're how maps, Google Maps and all that.
How the fuck do people get around?
Yeah, I mean, did you really walk around with maps? Are you kidding me?
I remember my parents would have books of just written down directions that they would have, how do we get here? And they literally
MapQuest, all
even before MapQuest,
exactly.
It's like we don't know how fucking fortunate we are. Like,
and people, especially the older people. But it's funny because the older people always say like, oh, young kids, like you're not thinking, and and with using maps, you actually use your brain and whatnot. And then now you see them all on Facebook. And, I mean, it's just it's funny how the older people obviously, I mean, they're doing everything that we're doing. Mm-hmm. In the sense of we first got onto Facebook, and then now because all the older people are moving to Facebook, we're moving away from there into Snapchat and all these other sites. And so like I mean I see my parents all the time, and they whenever they're on their phone, which is like all the time, I'm like, this is just, it's so weird how like these adults that are supposed to be adults are literally acting like us.
Well, let's get into that a little bit. Like it's inevitable to an extent because you have so much information on these fucking phones. Like it's impossible not to be enthralled with them. It's like I can learn literally anything just by sitting here, or you could waste your time playing like Candy Crush or like looking at Instagram models. But the opportunity is there to learn whatever the fuck you want, and that's, for some people, it's enthralling and consuming.
Oh, it's beautiful. It's beautiful that. I mean, we're living like kings in every sense of the word. Now, obviously, if you live in a shitty apartment or whatnot, you're still living like a king in the sense that you have a connection to any knowledge that you want. I mean, the rich people back in like when the 13 colonies was around, and even when America was really founded and it was around, like all these rich people would pay a ton of money to have books shipped from England. Mm-hmm. And it was a luxury to actually have books that you could read, and even reading was very scarce. Not many people did that. And now you have any book that you want for free, or just for a couple of dollars. I mean, it's insane how much knowledge we can possess, and I think that's where the importance of building those skills of self-improvement and reading and whatever it is that your strengths are. They're out there in the internet, mm-hmm. and you can learn them on YouTube, Google, whatever it is, but it's out there. And that's the beautiful part, is that we are, and Naval talks a lot about this meritocracy, where mm-hmm. where we're moving into a society where it doesn't matter, if you graduated from Princeton, or it doesn't matter if if your parents are wealthy or not. All that matters is, do you have the drive to do and to accomplish what you want, because everything's mm-hmm. out there.
Exactly. That's what, like, I tweeted about this a couple of weeks ago. Like, it hasn't hit people in earnest yet that it is out there, and you can literally bootstrap yourself for virtually free right now. Like, if you can go to the library, get access to the internet, you can start. I started my newsletter on MailChimp with a free subscription and grew a following, small, humble following, but a following nonetheless. And it was free. I just started it in my apartment. If people knew how many of the first newsletters I wrote in my underwear, they'd be a little surprised. But like, you can literally, if you have the drive, like you said, you can make something of yourself, and mm-hmm. it's incredible. Like that this opportunity has not existed for all of humanity ever. I mean, it's not. I mean, it hasn't in all of humanity yet. There's still millions to billions of people that need access to the internet, but it's coming. It'll get there, I believe. But
and also it's having, like what you said, the deferred gratification, and mm-hmm. like you building your email list. It's it's very difficult to build a following. Mm-hmm. But you keep going at it, and you're determined to do it, and you keep pumping out value, and in the beginning it's very, very slow, but you're gonna hit a stage where it just runs. Yeah. And then that's what I think that's what most people have a difficulty with, is keeping on track, because they get very excited in the beginning. Yes, I'm going to build this into, I'm going to be the next, Philly D, or whatever it is. I'm going to be the next, Oprah. Mm-hmm. But they don't realize that the first few years are going to be shit. Yeah.
No, that's one thing with the newsletter specifically. I just tell myself I got to show up every day, and just got to write every day, and it has led to stuff, and mm-hmm. just by showing up and actually putting an effort towards it, like, and holding myself to it has paid dividends, and it's only been 6-7 months. So just showing up and having that drive, and again, I'm innately curious about Bitcoin and blockchain. I love writing about it, and mm-hmm. I'm very happy I've gotten to a point where I write about something I love, and people actually like it and want to read it. So that's been a humbling and very, very awesome experience over the last 7 months. And like you said, it's going to take time. Like you have to realize, like I started out with 15 subscribers that were family and friends, and I was under 100 probably for the first month. And then you get 3 months in, I'm at like 500. I'm like, oh, this is cool. Then you get tweeted by like Ryan Selkis or Santiago Siri, and it jumps to 1,000. It's like, holy shit! Like, what the hell's going on? Why are you people reading my shit? And but yeah, it's a process. Show up. My mentality with what I'm doing is show up every day.
And love the process. I mean, Gary Vaynerchuk is great at this. I would recommend people look at him because he's like, I like the grind. I like the dirt, the hustle, the failures, all of that, because that's really what builds you up into an individual and gives you the skills and the experience to know what you did well and what you didn't do well and how you can change it. And people are they're very afraid to mess up, so they don't even try because they're afraid to mess up.
Yeah, that's the one thing that, like, once you get over that hump where it's like, I don't fucking care. Like, I've said some dumb shit. I've written some dumb shit, but like, get your reps in. Like what Gary says, get your reps in. Reps are key. And
also, we're all so young. I mean, it's like you look at. I like to read a lot of the biographies of the great people. All these titans and all that, and the majority of them, they started doing very well in their 40s and their 50s. I mean, 60s. You have someone like Warren Buffett still running his
Berkshire Hathaway.
Yeah, and he's like, I don't know, 70s, 80s.
Yeah, he's up there.
And so people they get very impatient, and they think that, in your 20s you have to be this person that you saw in some Hollywood film, when really it's your 20s and even later. Like, you just keep putting in the effort, focus on building skills, be patient, because it's going to come to you.
Exactly.
And that's something that I love about Gary, is that he tells people how to play the game, and people just don't really know how to play the game. But the game is whatever you make it. And just don't get impatient. And also, I think this goes back to the whole. So I have a beef with college. I really didn't. I mean, I enjoyed socially my experience at UConn, but I pretty quickly I realized that it wasn't what I wanted. And the main thing was that it just wasn't. The education system is not set up in a way to reflect what's currently happening in society, in the sense of every individual learns differently, and every individual has different interests and what's curious for them. So like something for me, like math, if I'm not interested in it, why do I need to learn about math? Or obviously you as an individual should be well-rounded and understand all these types of subjects, but the way that it's being taught is just, it's horrible.
Yeah. Like the factory mentality behind it is, I mean, I fucking hated school. I was I would fucking coasted through college with a 3.0. Like, didn't even try. I mean, I'm not going to say I didn't try, but like, I wasn't like as enthralled in the work. Like, I was focusing on Bitcoin when I was in college. Like,
yeah, I mean,
I wasn't taking classes on Bitcoin. But I was reading about it every day, all day.
And college really has just turned now into a certificate. It's really a status signal.
Yeah.
To say, oh, I went to college. But right now, first of all, everyone's going to college. So and I think so. What's happening now is people think college is like the only way to get ahead in life, and it's not. If anything, I think it actually puts you down in life, because one, you get out of college, especially in the U.S., with a ton of debt. Most people can't pay it off, and then in your 20s, where you should be building those skills and working your ass off, but also you most likely are not going to be making a lot of money. And so to graduate college with, $20,000, $30,000 or even more, which is what a lot of people are graduating with a ton of debt, you don't have as much choice to just say, fuck it, let's do this business, or fuck it, let me work, getting paid $10 an hour, interning for, a CEO or whatever it is. Like, you don't get these chances to really kind of grow at the level that you should be growing at. So that's kind of what I really hate about college is that, if you're looking to the future of the United States in particular, I mean, I love the US. I am a huge patriot and all that. And so how can we see a good future for our kids if we're, one, giving them really shitty education? Because you see these kids graduating college, what are your skills? Like, what did you learn?
Exactly.
We're not building skills. We're just telling people what to memorize, to
telling
take
people
tests.
to take tests. Yeah, I fucking hated tests.
And you graduate with no skills because the system isn't built to give you skills. It's built to, you know, keep you kind of in line and memorize and all this. And on top of that, you have a ton of debt that you need to pay off that it's increasing, you know, yearly because of the interest. Like this is not the America that you want to have.
No.
You want to have an America where people focus on, really, you give people the tools, which is the internet, to learn, and you have these kind of internship, apprenticeship type of programs where you let's say you want to be an investor, so you should go into companies that already have investors, or obviously the whole education system being revamped is going to take a while and figure out exactly how it works, but yeah, the current system is just, I mean, it's horrible. And so a lot of people ask me if they should go to college, and really, I mean, for the most part, I tell them, no, you shouldn't. I mean, if I had an opportunity to go back to college or not, I wouldn't go. And I mean, obviously I learned a ton, but it's a very, very bad system. And it's just unfortunate because the people that really kind of go into college and you know, they get their master's and PhD, and obviously most people it works out, but they do it just because. I wouldn't
even say most people.
Yeah, well, for some, yeah.
Yeah.
Because, you know, they jump through all the hoops and then they graduate and they're like, what the hell? Okay, so what's going on? Yeah. Well, and that's why you need to question everything.
Yeah.
Everything that society tells you about everything, because society doesn't have your interest at heart. So you need to, you know, start to think for yourself, and also your family. You know, your family grew up in an era where college was extremely important. Like you don't get a job at a company unless you have a college degree, and obviously it's still prevalent now, but like
it's losing its influence.
And now what companies care, I mean, the companies that are going to be around and that are going to succeed and do well are companies that really care about the experience and what do you bring to the table, because you can go into most of these companies. Obviously there's some that you couldn't, but most of these companies and within a few months you already know everything that you need to know. You don't need a college course.
Yeah, no, and that's one thing. I was happy to go to college in Chicago. I decided to take night classes my senior year and like work during the week, during the day. And I learned a lot more at work than I did at school. But I'm very happy to have had that experience and that opportunity, and I think it has paid off dividends because it's taught me like you've got to create the skills yourself. So I worked at a quasi hedge fund. I worked for a managed futures fund out of school, like during school and then after school for a year. And I understand, like, I love learning about finance markets, futures markets in particular. But I just had a fucking like thirst and hunger to learn more. So I decided I wanted to learn about apps and UX and the psychology behind apps and why people use them and how to design experiences. So I quit and did a design boot camp to learn about that. And I was like, all right, I learned about the design side. Now, how the fuck are these apps made on the back end? How do you code them? So I went to go work for a software company and learned about that. And then at the same time, still diving down the Bitcoin rabbit hole. And it was like, all right, how do I bring this all together? And right now, I'm not a good coder. I can code, but I'm not like a great developer at all by any means. But I think I understand code and sort of how the psychology behind these apps, like the full product process from designing an experience to coding it on the back end, is important to know. And so now I'm just trying to figure out how to put that all together with Bitcoin and how I can help people there. And what I decided was most needed in Bitcoin and cryptocurrency in general at this juncture of the market is education. That's what I'm doing with the podcast and the newsletter. And hopefully I'll iterate on that with the product. So just trying to figure that out. It's fun. And like you said, you got to have patience. Like it's not going to come to you all at once. Like you got to go through the experiences. You have to have experience to an extent.
And you never know when you working at that fund or, you know, doing this or that is actually going, I mean, it's all going to come together, which is the beautiful part of kind of the puzzle of life, where you have all these pieces and you don't know, like, what the hell am I going to do with all these pieces? And then you find an opportunity where you're like, damn, like everything has led up to this moment. And like everything that you thought was just irrelevant just fits perfectly. And that just comes with, you know, following your curiosity and not really worrying too much about kind of where the journey leads, because it's going to lead somewhere as long as you follow your curiosity and build those skills, because it's, you know, that's I mean, that's a beautiful part of life is you don't know where it goes, but once you end up there, you're like, how did I end up here? But I love it.
Yeah. Yeah. How did I end up at Barstool Sports? That's what I want to know. If you were to tell me 3 years ago I'd be working at Barstool Sports, I would have told you to go fuck yourself.
Yeah, I mean, that's a beautiful part of life. You just don't know where you're going to end up.
Yeah, no, it's a beautiful journey. And with that, I think this might be a perfect endpoint for our conversation.
Great. Well, I appreciate it. And it was always it was a fun time.
It was, that's like I said, just tales from the crypt. I want to hear the tales, the story behind the people that I'm seeing on Twitter, and your story is very fascinating, and your how you got to the point you are right now. I was very, very thankful that you came to tell your story.
Thank you. Well, I appreciate it.
Where can we learn more about you? Well,
so you can follow me on Twitter at Crypto de Medici. It's Crypto de Medici. That's where I talk a lot about the markets and crypto in general. That's probably the best place to reach me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. If you're not following Crypto de Medici yet, get on it because you're missing out. And yeah, follow Marty Bent. That's my Twitter handle. Subscribe to the podcast if you like it. Please share it with anybody that's looking to learn about Bitcoin or crypto in general. Tell people about the newsletter. Subscribe to the newsletter. And enjoy the rest of your week, freaks. Peace and love. Woo! That was fun.
Yeah, that was great.